Thank you very much, Radwan, and thanks Andrew and Stephen for helping to organize this. I think it's very fitting, of course, that we're at the Center for Islam and Democracy for discussing such a speech. I'll look at several aspects of the speech, and I have the advantage of going last, so I can also make reference to the other speakers. First, the setting. And the choice of Cairo was a very interesting site for this speech. It had some critics. Should Obama be speaking in a country that is not democratic, that has many shortcomings in its own performance on democracy and human rights? But at the same time, it is the center in many ways for the Arab and Islamic world. Who was in the room during the speech? The thousands of people there really did represent diversity in Egypt. And I think that reflects the diversity in the Arab world as well. There were clearly party faithfuls, NDP and friends. There were also democracy activists. There were the new generation as well as the old generation. And you saw secular and Muslim Brotherhood. Some of this was simply reported on, but you can also judge by, as American pundits like to do, judging the applause and standing ovations that various comments get. The rousing applause that you heard during the mention of the word democracy is just one example that this was not simply a pro-regime audience. We will, for some time, perhaps pick apart the words of this speech, but I think, and this is something that recently was mentioned by a visitor here to Washington, head of an Egyptian organization, a young man who spoke about the feeling that a speech leaves. He talked about when Jimmy Carter came to Egypt and the stories that his father would tell. I think it's very interesting that 30 years ago, he, as a young man, is recalling stories that his father told, and the feeling of respect and vision that Jimmy Carter left when he addressed an audience in Cairo. Here, I think Obama succeeded very well. He talked a great deal about respect, while policy, at the end of the day, will make all the difference. He did leave, I think he left a very strong feeling of respect and demonstrated a shift in how America is addressing the Arab world. And he also talked about his own personal journey, and I think that was very significant for many in the audience. As a minority, as someone who grew up with a Muslim father. Something else, that happened before and after the speech, Secretary Clinton and others have been holding meetings privately with various groups here in Washington and also in Cairo. Last week, Freedom House had a group of young activists here. They got a very private audience with Secretary Clinton. Clinton also met with human rights activists when she was in Cairo. Many of them were pro-regime, friends of the government, but among them were also some independents. We've heard about the 3 Ds, and that the new administration is considering the pillars of its policy: diplomacy, development, and defense. It's one of the things that I was clearly looking out for. I know you've made many references to it, Radwan, is will there be a 4th D, democracy? I think clearly in this speech there was. And I want to just take a minute first to talk specifically about how that was framed. First, he did make a distinction between Iraq and what he means by democracy. The war in Iraq, as his own policy proves, he was against the war in Iraq, and he acknowledged that no form of government should be imposed, which is also a reference to his opposition to the war and votes against it. He also spoke specifically about Iraq and about U.S. policy in Iraq. Clearly a plan for withdrawal of American troops and not imposing greatly in the future.